So today I wanted to kind of ramble about some thoughts I had on the concept of biophilia and necrophilia. Um, as we've understand it, and I think, for those of you who maybe don't know what I'm talking about, in our progression of feminism and our understanding of the state of women and the state of patriarchy and what are men and what women could be if we were actually free. You know, there's, ideas of like how women are biophilic and how men are necrophilic. And there's this, contrast. And Mary Daly talks a lot about this, but, other women I've, read their writings have talked about this or mentioned it or, built ideas off of it. And here's my thoughts on the matter. The basic idea of biophilia versus necrophilia, as Mary Daly presents it, and as many other feminists describe the, philosophical idea, is that women are inherently life-loving, right? Biophilia, love of the life. And that men, by contrast, are necrophilic, which is death-loving, that they love death. So there's a very dichotomous type of idea being set up here that I don't think is completely wrong, but I also don't, I do think it is incorrect. I don't think that women are biophilic and men are necrophilic. I think that women love life and death, that women are life and death. Men are undeath. So I guess I'll start with looking at women. That women being biophilic, I think, is pretty easy. I don't think I really need to get into details about and explaining the biophilic aspect of women. But explaining death, explaining that why women really love death and appreciate death, what it is. That we like to think of ourselves as being so life-loving and yay, we're so life-loving and loving and whatever, and we shun violence and we shun death because we associate violence and death with men, because men do a lot of violence and they commit a lot of death, they create a lot of death, right? And suffering. But I think that we've been tricked. I think that men don't actually have a monopoly on violence and death. I think women and all living creatures have a right to violence and a right to death, to create death, because that's, in a sense, defining what life is, right? If you allow something to die all the way, then you're defining what's left as life. So I know that's a little vague, but abortion would be the perfect example, right? Oh, we're so biophilic, right? Well, then why do we fight for abortion rights? Why do we think abortion is so important? Right? Well, because we have a right to violence and death. Because we are such life-loving creatures, we understand the importance of letting things die all away. Because we understand that if a being is born into a situation which cannot accommodate its humanity, it will have an existence of incredible suffering and basically what would amount to being half dead. And that's something that life-loving people find intolerable, the state of being half dead, right? Life-loving people say, well, you're either fully alive or you're fully dead. That's the only right way to be. If you're something in between, that's wrong. There's something very wrong about that, right? So, I hear women say they don't believe in violence, or they don't like violence, or they associate violence with men. They associate death with men, and understandably so. But I really think that our right to violence and death we've been tricked into thinking that that's not a part of who we are, and I think it is. I think it very much is a part of who we are, because we love life and we defend life. We defend quality of life. Because we are biophilic, we actually can feel the depth and significance of death in our bones, in the cells in our body. Life comes from our bodies. So when death happens, necessarily, we feel the significance of that in every cell in our body. And we feel the loss, the depth of the loss there. But the importance of things being able to fully die. Right? I mean, along with abortion, along that same line of thinking and argumentation, also support euthanasia, right? That you have people who are sick and suffering and who have diseases that are completely incurable or disabilities that are completely unfixable, and they're left to face the rest of their indefinite period of being alive in a state of suffering, which is to say that they're really just in a state of half-deadness, right? A state of undead, not undead, but, well, I mean, yeah, but half-death in a sense, right? And we think that that's cruel. We understand it's cruel because it is. Because this person is no longer being allowed to live a full, happy life, relatively free of suffering, And these people want to die. There's people out there who write about this. I'm not saying we should sadistically, embrace this, but we understand the gravity of the situation. Women, we really do. And the world that we make, I think, would understand that. And that's why we fight for the right for abortion, and actually back to abortion, to say that people who are anti-abortion, they like to call themselves pro-life, but they're not pro-life. They're pro-undeath. They're pro letting more and more beings come into existence to just live a life of suffering and a life of being undead, a life of not being fully alive, So pro-life is actually pro-undeath. That would be a more accurate term in my eyes. So I think that's about all I wanted to say about women. But on the men's side, so men not being biophilic, also because they can't fully appreciate life, they can't fully appreciate death either. And when we understand men all the way down to their genetic level of what they are, which I've already discussed in previous videos and on my blog, we understand that their existential imperative is to extract resources. Like, that's it. It doesn't get more complicated than that. They might develop very complicated and sophisticated strategies for doing that, but their end goal is always the same: extract resources. And the most effective way to extract resources from living beings is to put those living beings in a state of undeath, which is another way to say that you're separating their brain from their body. You separate their mind from their body just enough to keep them from being fully alive. Because if they were fully alive, they would rip your face off, right? Because a fully alive being understands the importance of death and understands the importance of using violence to defend life. Think of the lioness. Something threatens her cubs, she's gonna rip your fucking ass off. Because she has the right to violence, she has the right to defend life, her own life, and that of her kin. And she has the right to defend quality of life. So she feels the value of life and therefore understands the meaning of death. But men, their objective is to keep everything in this undead state, and they've done a very good job of it. They've converted the whole world into this undead, zombified state, right? Where they can just keep indefinitely extracting resources from bodies, whether you're talking about women, children, other men, animals, plants, and the earth herself, literally the soil, literally drawing resources out of the physical earth. In order to do that, they have to keep everything in an undead state. Now, men do kill. Yeah, they do kill. They understand that killing something all the way is really just the thing you do once you no longer can extract resources. Men don't really fully feel that, you know. Now, of course, if we're going to talk about individual men, I mean, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about existentially what men are and the world that they create based on their value system, based on their existential imperative, which you can trace right down to their chromosomes. Here's a line that pops into my head from a movie that you all probably are aware of. I'm going to go ahead and use a quote from the movie Kill Bill.
Is that not the perfect visual image of life and death? A fish flapping on the carpet and a fish not flapping on the carpet.
The male writer of the story, thinking this is such a brilliant example of what death is, basically has written this line that I think perfectly exemplifies not what death is, but perfectly exemplifies how men don't actually really understand what death is. A fish flapping, and then a fish not flapping. Which is just another way of saying, I see a body moving, and a body not moving. Which to say what men see in that circumstance is a body, and not a living creature. And they understand that body to either be moving, aka useful to me still, or not moving, no longer useful to me. So that's men's understanding of death, right? And I think that that's what makes men afraid of death, you know, and what male thinking and male mentality that women learn teaches us to be afraid of death, right? Because men, not really fully understanding death, are terrified of it. They're terrified of it. They're terrified of, like, what happens after I don't exist anymore? I know I exist, but then what after that? And they have all kinds of existential pissing their pants crises, you know, over it, and they make up all kinds of stories to try and comfort themselves. That's basically what religion is, you know. And then they teach that to women, and then they spread their existential anxieties into us and make us afraid of death. But women who truly feel in themselves the value of life, women who have been able to recover themselves and be life-loving, will not be afraid of death, because she will understand the value and importance of death, right? She'll understand, because we love life so much, we should understand really how important death is when it is meant to happen, when it is meant to happen. When death happens in a way that ensures the quality of the continuing life, then that's a good death. And I think, you know, women who are wild would conceptualize, you know, the whole world, the whole of existence, and how death is a part of that as really just nothing to be afraid of, you know? It's like, okay, your body's gone, sure, you know, and probably the rest of you is somewhere else or plays a part, or like your existence still lives on through those who you've interacted with, you know what I mean? In that sense, that understanding that, like, it doesn't matter, like, if I keep experiencing things after I die, if I exist in some way or I don't exist in some way, because the thing is that you continue to live through those who are still living, who are still alive, because you've passed on your legacy to them. You've taught them your words, you've taught them your ideas, you've taught them your values, you've taught them your understanding of the world, you've taught them your memories, they remember you, you know. And our influences extend, you know, indefinitely through subsequent generations. So when we do continue to exist in that sense. So there's nothing to be afraid of, you know. So yeah, that's sort of just my idea. And again, this is just philosophical. I mean, it's not really, I think we've allowed men to trick us into thinking that violence and death belong to them, and I don't think it does. I think that they've used violence and death to attain their ultimate goals, you know, their male imperatives. But yeah, they don't have a monopoly on violence. They don't have a monopoly on death. you know? And so when I hear women say, oh, I don't like violence, I don't like violence, I don't believe in violence, I don't believe in violence, what I see are women who have been convinced that the natural state of a woman is to have her hands tied behind her back. If you actually value life, you'll fucking fight for it. If you actually value your own life, you'll defend yourself by any means, you know? And even wild animals understand that. And women do understand that on a deeper level. But again, our brains have been separated from our bodies in so many ways. And the whole process of recovering ourselves as living beings is reconsolidating our brain within itself and reconsolidating our brain with our body, reconsolidating our soul, and reclaiming what's ours. And guess what? A part of what's ours actually is violence and death. It actually is. Otherwise, how would you sit there and say that you believe abortion is okay? If women are only biophilic and women aren't violent at all, if violence it belongs solely to men and death belongs solely to men, then you should be against abortion. And yeah, I don't think you should be against abortion. What I'm saying is that I feel like you got to follow that thought to the end, you know. Women are the ones who understand fully in every cell in our body what life is, because we make it with our bodies, and every cell of our body is designed for that. Therefore, we understand what death is and the meaning of it, the necessity of dying, the importance of dying. I mean, I doubt there's any woman listening to this who would argue that death is the worst thing that can happen. We all know there are much worse things than death. We live it every fucking day. You know? It happens every day to women. You know? There are worse things than death. People want to die. People kill themselves all the time. People wish they were dead all the time. People wish they were not born all the time, because their life of undeath has become so fucking intolerable, insufferable. There are things worse than death. And women know this because we value life.